Good morning. I am Jonathan Hawkins from the ASP.NET team, and today we're going to talk about how to search enable both your ASP.NET and your Silverlight applications.
And I'm Nathan Bougie. I'm from the Live Search team. I'm a product manager, and I'm here to talk about some of the new capabilities that we have in Live Search.
So here are the topics which we're going to cover today. Primarily talking about why search is important, and then we're going to talk about how you can make your site more searchable by crawlers, and then show you how you can do some of these things inside ASP.NET. Plus, we're going to show you some of the work which we have done for sitemaps, and how you can add dynamic data, and how you can Silverlight enable your apps. And then Nathan's going to talk about how you can even make your site better with Live.
So why is search important? I think this is the #1 reason. When I talk to customers, they tell me that between 30 and 60% of their traffic, their inbound traffic, is from a major search engine. And I think the main reason for this is that search has come a long way since the days of Alta Vista. With PageRank and link weighting, the search relevancy has just become much, much better. And search is also a much more, I guess, forgiving and powerful experience than using the address bar. With innovations like spell checking, query refinement, and instant answers, there's just a whole lot more for customers. And I think that this kind of trend is just going to get more and more dramatic as search continues to evolve and break out of the browser. Search will eventually be everywhere, I believe, from your mobile phone to integrated into your line of business apps, integrated directly into all major operating systems, and integrated into the browser, not just on a web page. So what this means is that search engine optimization is going to become an even more significant part of designing, building, planning, deploying, and launching web apps. So today we're going to talk about sitemaps, which is one of the key tools that you can use to, I guess, in your SEO toolkit. It's one of the key tools. And now Visual Studio supports it by default in ASP.NET 3.0 Futures. Oh, thanks. So search, it turns out, is not just important on the web, but it's also becoming more and more important on your specific site. The expectations that users have based on their web searches are kind of coming over to people's websites where they're not browsing on websites anywhere near like they used to. Instead, they're using the same search techniques that they've learned on the major search engines to kind of hunt and peck for information. And that's why site search is such an important thing, because it's how people navigate your website. And the better experience you have on site search, the more you can build that relationship with your customers and expose them to more and more content from your website. So something else we'll talk about today are some tools that are available within Visual Studio and Live Search to help optimize your site search experience. But before we get into Visual Studio, I thought we'd talk briefly about a few generic SEO pieces of advice. And the first thing I would say for all web developers is that the most important thing you do is design your web page for customers, not for search engines. So what this means is make sure that you're not stuffing your page full of links, that you're not hiding any text or selectively rendering text just for search engines versus customers. Those are kind of like the cardinal sins that may get you banned from a search engine, which is a big bad. Some of the things that you want to do are to really understand your customers and make sure that you're building the right content that will get them to come and link to you automatically, or offering RSS feeds that will allow them to kind of consume your site at their own time and build kind of an ongoing relationship. The second most important thing is to use your tags well. Make sure that you're using title tags well, that you're using meta tags well, and header tags. I'm not saying that you shouldn't ever use keywords, but be deliberate when you do use keywords, and make sure that you use them consistently within those tags and within your paragraphs, so the search engines aren't confused when they come and crawl your website. Let's see. Oh, and alt tags. Alt tags are very important, especially for I guess, text-based content, like images, static objects, like YouTube feeds, ActiveX controls, and anything else that might just sit in your website. And the next thing is have a great site search experience as well as a really clean navigation. Because with search, customers are going to be coming into your website from any page. They may not come in on your homepage. In fact, on Microsoft.com, I think, less than 10% of traffic comes to our homepage. The vast majority of the traffic comes to a page inside Microsoft.com somewhere. So it's really, really important to have a really clean table of contents, a really clean navigation experience, and a great site search experience. So when they get to that page, if it's not exactly what they're looking for, you can still, they have these visual cues so they know where to go so you don't lose that traffic. So they don't have to go back to the search engine to try and find a better place to come into your website. And the last, I guess, general piece of advice for SEO is don't be afraid to hire a consultant. SEO is really complicated, and a consultant can really help optimize not just traffic coming into your website, not just targeted traffic coming into your website, but also the conversions once they get to your website, and help you optimize some of your SEM campaigns as well. When you hire an SEO consultant, make sure that they're reputable and you've checked their references so they're not doing any black hat stuff that could get you banned eventually. And make sure that performance is a part of the contract that you sign. A tip is if they have anything like Traffic Blazer or just $39.99 a month in their marketing brochures, they're probably not the right vendor.
Some other things you can do to ensure that you have simple links, but also that your links are made up of a small number of parameters. Often I've seen if you go out and you do a search, and you'll see there's like, say, 25 parameters inside the query string. And chatting with Nathan, the crawlers kind of disregard those in that those pages are very, very complex for the crawlers to actually navigate. So here I've put up two simple examples. One is I can put something in the query string, where I can do item ID equals 22. Even better is I can use ASP.NET features like URL rewriting, and I can rewrite the 22 into /movie/view.aspx. And if you go up to Scott Guthrie's blog, he has some good code in terms of how you can actually rewrite URLs. And that will make your links more relevant and drive more traffic to those pages. The other big point in terms of dynamic content is to review your pages inside a text browser like links, or so you can see what the experience is going to be for browsers which have turned off JavaScript, they've turned off Flash, they have turned off ActiveX, they've turned off Silverlight, and see what type of additional text renderings you have to do in HTML and in links for high-end features, so that both those down-level browsers but also crawlers have content to index, because crawlers only know about HTML text and they know about links. They are beginning to learn more about Swift files, and they will begin to learn more about XAML, but at least for the foreseeable future, provide HTML text renderings and links for pages, and try and stay true to that tenet that Nathan spoke about, which is always generate pages for users. So think about down-level browsers and use a tool like links. Do you want to talk about robots and sitemaps?
Yeah. Dynamic pages are hard for crawlers because crawlers were designed back in, the mid to late 90s to crawl static web pages. And the problem with dynamic is they're dynamic. And so that's where sitemaps come in. And what a sitemap does is it gives a crawler a list of everything that you have on your website, as well as all the metadata that it needs to understand your website. And robots.txt is really important because that lets you control what the robot does on your website. There are a lot of robots out there, and you might not want them all crawling your website all the time. It could get expensive. One common mistake that we see is people will go out to robotstxt.org and they'll just download the default robots.txt example, stick it up on their website, which is deny : which by default turns every robot off. And then they'll go down and they'll say, hey, allow : Googlebot. And that's it. And they say, hey, we're good to go. The challenge with that is, well, Google is huge. There's still only about 50 to 60% of the market share worldwide. So you're leaving 40% of search engines still unable to crawl your website. So you want to just make sure that you go in and add in all the search engines or all the browser, all the crawlers, such as Slurp, Yahoo's, MSN Bot, which is ours, and the Jeeves crawler to get that other 40%. Something else you might want to do is, a lot of people, when you're generating a dynamic website, sometimes you'll go in and you'll say, you know what, I don't like the way this whole site is architected, so I'm going to change the way my URLs are laid out. And when you do that, the search engine indexes still have all of those old URLs in their cache. The best thing you can do is make sure that you use 301 or 302 redirects. And if you use those, the crawler will make a note of that and update their index appropriately. And I can't remember which one's which, but I think 301 is a permanent redirect and the 302 is a temporary redirect. So just use those appropriately.
Okay. So we have been working on the ASP.NET Future CDP, and we have a couple of features in the box. One is a search data source that you can plug into your pages, and it's got a built-in provider model. And what you can do with the search data source is put it on a page, bind things like text boxes and buttons and that type of thing. So normal normal ASP.NET UI controls to capture whatever search criteria you want. The search data source will go and find the actual list of search providers that are configured inside your application's web.config, and it can then go and make search requests. I put one search provider in the box for live search, and inside the quick starts, I put in sample code for index server, which is more of a sort of in-house enterprise type search engine, and also one for Yahoo, so you folks can see how easy it is to actually write a search provider. Hopefully within the next couple of weeks, I'll do something for SharePoint server search. Let's go and take a look at a demo of that. So here I have the ASP.NET Quick Starts, and I can navigate around, which is more of the browse mode that Nathan was talking about. However, I'd like to add search to the site because I want to look for particular keywords. My customers have said, browsing is good, but I want to be able to find content, so how can I do this? Well, here I have the ASP.NET project, and if I can copy in a couple of files into that. One is a search results page, some code, and an updated config file. And if I go into my master page for my site, which is essentially all of this Chrome on the top, what I can do is put in some code for the button and for the text box. And essentially what I'm doing is taking the input from the text box and passing it to a page so I can do a query. And the next thing is I will actually put in the buttons. So just by doing this, I can enable search. And if I go back and refresh the page, it's busy recompiling. We will see now that we get a text box. So I could do something like update panel and do a search. And in this case, I'm using index server. Index server has been around for about 5 years, kind of an older search engine, but you can see very simple, easy to be able to add something to your experience. Well, how can we make this better? Well, if I go into the configuration file, for the application, we'll see that we've got a new section inside web.config, which is our previous section, and we've got search, and we've got a set of providers. You can add one or multiple providers to this. Well, I just happen to have pre-registered with Live, and I can add a new search provider in here. And in this case, this provider is provided in the box. I provide the app ID to Live Search, which is a way to identify myself, and I provide the site domain name, which I own, which tells me only search against that particular domain. And if I save that, refresh the page, and now when I type for a search term, I can use the power of something like Live Search to go and get the results. And here I get good titles, I get good summaries, and I can get URLs. You can notice over here that the experience is styled inside my application, and it's a natural part of my experience. If we go and have a look at that page, here is the search data source that I have, and I've bound the text box to the query property of the search data source. That's all what you have to do. The data source will then provide the data to whatever UI elements are binding to it. And in this case, I've got a repeater. You can use whatever ASP.NET UI controls you want. And I've bound a hyperlink so the person can click on it. I've got labels, things like that. So within 5 minutes, I've search enabled my site for mostly content. Really easy, really, really simple. So what else can we do with this? Well, if I go into the config file, I can switch in something like Yahoo. And we'll go through the source code of this. So just, again, by switching out the provider, and I just switch it over to Yahoo. We'll see we get search results, slightly different results. Every single search engine has a different algorithm, but you can see I can easily move between these. Let's go and take a look at some code on how to build a search engine provider. So in this case, it's Yahoo. So we provide a base class in the box, which is our search provider base, and it primarily does some plumbing around config, but its primary method is to provide a base class that you can override. So for Yahoo, there's a URL that you go out for Yahoo, and this is their REST API, and I can provide my app ID, the query, the site I want to constrain the results to, and how many results. You can pretty much change this code. There's some stuff to read from config, and primarily it's the app ID and the site domain name. These are the two things that I can use to identify myself to Yahoo and constrain the results. And then the searching is really, really simple. I manufacture the URL, and I use XML text reader, which is inside the .NET framework. I go make the query, and I go pass out the results. That's all the code. So in about 150 lines of code, I've built a search provider for Yahoo. If you have your own search engine, or you have commercial agreements with other search engine providers, and you want to integrate those directly into your application, you can use sample code like this to begin to have tight integration and style it using ASP.NET. So I've just put some sample code in here, but just to reinforce the point, there is a search data source, and you can bind it using regular ASP.NET UI controls, things like grids or repeaters and text boxes.
So I guess we kind of did an overview of sitemaps already. I guess the last thing to mention is the sitemap file. There's a bunch of different ways to provide sitemaps. You can use a text file, you can use an XML file, or you can just use an RSS feed. So if you have a blog, just take that RSS feed and use that. It's probably good enough. But if you have a dynamic website, you probably want to use an XML file because it's the richest, most flexible format. In the XML file, there's a couple different parameters. There's a priority parameter. There's a frequency of update parameter, and then there's a last modified parameter. You want to add all of that in, because everything you put in the sitemap.xml file is kind of hints to the search engine that helps the search engine better understand your content, to better place it for the right, most targeted search engines or search terms, and drive the most traffic back. Let's see, and I guess the last thing I'll mention is, once you have your sitemap file, there's a couple different things that you can do to kind of promote it to the different search engines. The first thing you can do, which is, I guess, the most work, is to go and register with each search engine, their webmaster tools, upload your file to them, and then you're good to go. They'll come back and they'll pull it. The second thing you can do is use their ping URL, which if you go to the sitemap protocol, it will list that URL for each of the major search engines. And every time you update your sitemap file, you can just ping them, and they'll know that it's updated, and they can then come and crawl it again, or maybe not, depending on whatever it is they do. And the last thing you can do, which is what we recommend, is to use the auto-discovery directive in the robots.txt. This is a new standard that was just launched maybe 3 weeks ago in New York at SES, and it's really simple. Just in your robots.txt file, add a line that says sitemap : and then give the full name, full path to your sitemap file. And you can give the full path to the sitemap index file, or the sitemap.xml file, or a zipped archive. And it will just work. And the cool part about that is you don't have to go and build a relationship with each individual search engine. You just do it once, and all the major search engines can just grab it and use it. Easy, easy. Yes, yes it is, towards the bottom.
Okay, so a couple things which we've done inside ASP.NET. One is we provided a very easy way to take your web.sitemap or your navigation.sitemap and turn that into a search sitemap. So just by putting a couple of lines in configuration. And then the other thing, which we're going to show, is how you can take dynamic data. Many ASP.NET applications are built using code, pulling data from a database or from a service, and most sitemaps or sitemap tools are driven for static pages. So we're going to show you how you can build code behind your sitemaps. Let's go and take a look at a demo of that. So just to get back to Nathan's point, here's robots, and is that the correct directive?
Yes.
Okay, so it's very, very easy for you to drop something like a robots.txt into your site, or just add this particular line and point it to your sitemap. For the ASP.NET Futures, we've built in a standard handler, which is search sitemaps.axt, and this is where we drive all of the dynamic sitemap index and feeds from it. That's enough about that. Here's a site which I have, simple sort of Northwinds, data-intensive type app. I can navigate around, so I can look for categories, look for beverages by category, and in this case, I even have a page which is Silverlight enabled. So, and we'll talk about that in the second demo, but I can even do a search for something like beverages. So just a simple data-intensive app. I've got search. This is more data-type search than content-type search, but how can we make this site more search-enabled for the crawlers? So one is if we go and have a look at our config file, we've added another section which is search sitemap. And I've added one provider, and I've called it navigation, and we can parse one of our built-in types. And if I add that single line, we'll turn the ASP.NET web.sitemap into a crawler sitemap, and they can begin to index it. So we'll convert the XML. The other thing that you can do is if you go into your ASP.NET web sitemap, you can annotate it with those attributes that Nathan spoke about, things like priority, things like change frequency, and we will pick up those attributes and put them into the search sitemap for you. So you can use these existing files. So let's go and take a look and see how that looks. So I've got a couple of helper files here. If I go click on that AXD, let's see if we can make that a little bit bigger for everyone. Okay, so we'll see here that we just generated a sitemap index based on some content, some entries which we have inside the configuration file. And the first one points to our navigation, and we can see we have the URL, and we've got some products and suppliers and categories. And I didn't have to do any work. I just put the entries in the config file. So if I was a crawler and I was requesting this page, you'll see here that we can get back those particular URLs and those annotations that I put. There is the last modified, the change frequency, and the priority. I can put those automatically into the feed and tell the crawlers which pages in my site in terms of navigation are important and how frequently should they be crawled. Well, that's good in terms of navigation. What about for data? Well, if I go back to the config file, we'll see here that we've got a couple of examples. One is I've got product, and this is my product catalog. And what I can do is I can say, I want to call some code, and in this case, it's product sitemap data, and I'm going to call that code and get back a collection of entries that I want to be able to generate, and I'm going to generate those entries and target the product.aspx URL, and I'm going to pull out the product ID from the collection and manufacture URL. So if I've got items in my product catalog, I come along on a particular business day and I add a new item to my product catalog, and I then go and use the ping capability for the sitemap crawlers and say, hey, I have some new stuff inside my product catalog. They'll come along and they will ask for the sitemap, and my new product will automatically be inside the sitemap feed. I don't need to go and run tools, and I don't have to go and manufacture these feeds. Just providing the code that can query the database, it can put entries directly inside the sitemap. Let's go and have a look at the code behind that. So here is product. Here's a query. In this case, I'm using Link, which is our new database API. You can use ADO.NET. You can use whatever code that you want to return a collection that supports enumerable. And pretty much all of the collections inside ASP.NET support that. In this case, I'm doing a query that says, you know, I've got quite a few items in stock that are 10 times the reorder level. I kind of want to clear those out. I want to increase the priority of those particular items to the crawlers, and I can mark those pages as important. So just by doing a simple query against the database, and I can return that, if I go back to the config file, we'll see that we can get those links to the product.aspx and to the product ID. I also built a page that is Silverlight enabled. Let's go take a look at that. So now if I go and ask for that particular feed, we'll see here that I've got those entries from my database. I didn't specify those anywhere in the code. I just made the query to the database, and those items get pulled from the database and put inside the feed. And this is very, very powerful if you have dynamic data sitting inside a database. So we also provide a fair amount of extensibility where you can specify, I don't want to use question mark. I have a more of a sort of Ajax-centric app, and I'm going to use pound. I'm going to specify the parameters. Well, you can do that. I can also specify the format string of the query string. So my fields that I get from my database or from my collection may not exactly match what I want to put inside the query string. So I can use a format string and exactly specify what format I want for the URLs inside the sitemap. Let's go and have a look at the categories code. We'll see in this case, I can even specify fields in terms of last modified frequency and priority. Here I've changed the fields from standard names. If I look at supplier, where I've got standard names, if you specify these names, we will automatically detect them and use those default names. However, you can override them, like we saw in category, and specify your own names. If you do that, you can fill in the fields, and then if you go in the configuration file, you can specify what fields you want us to data bind for. So let's go and have a look at that inside the sitemap feed. So we'll go pull out category 2. And we'll see in this case, we've customized the URL based on data, based on formatting. I can put anything that I want in there. And the tools that we provide from ASP.NET are the base classes and the providers and the formatting to generate these feeds for your product catalog data. So the next thing which I'm going to show is some experimental work which we have, which is how do we search enable Silverlight or Ajax style apps. This has been a big problem as we've moved more programming from the server side where they would generate HTML to the client side, so the Ajax, Flash, Silverlight. So this is some experimental work, and feel free to send me some feedback. So here I have a Silverlight enabled page. And you can see I'm bringing in the scripts to boot up Silverlight. And what I have on the page are 2 divs. One is a dynamic div, which is where I'm going to put my dynamic content. I could put Ajax, Flash, or Silverlight in here. The other one is I've got flat content. And in the dynamic content, you'll see here I'm just booting up Silverlight, and that's all. So there isn't much in this page for the crawler to analyze. However, I have given it a hint down below, and I'm not generating a different page for the crawler. Both crawlers and browsers get the same page. Everyone gets the same information. And that stays true to our tenant of generating pages for users. However, we also string to our tenant, which is checking our pages for browsers which have turned off JavaScript, they've turned off ActiveX controls, so I can check it in a tool like Links, and I can verify that down-level browsers can actually view this particular content. So in this case, all I've put in is the product name, so there is something for the actual user to see or for the crawler to see. And the other little tool which I built is a thing called data links, which if I have a Silverlight app, which I'm only going to have maybe 1 or 2 pages, or if I have an Ajax app where I have, say, 1 or 2 pages, the user is going to navigate within that page. So what I can do is I can provide links back to that page so I can view the different items or the different items in the product catalog for that particular app. So lots of talking. Let's actually go and see how this works. Oh, and the one thing I forgot to mention was if I do happen to have JavaScript turned on, well, I've sent the content down, I can just go and remove that content from the actual UI. So I'm still returning the same page down to the browser and down to the crawler and down to links, but I just can, if I do have JavaScript turned on in the browser, I can go and remove that alternative experience. So here, if I go and click on Gumbo Mix, we'll see in this case I've got the same experience, and the white box below is being rendered by Silverlight. If we had a designer, I'm sure that'd make a much better experience. But in this case, I'm running code in the browser that's making a web service call back to my ASP.NET app, getting the data and displaying it. However, if I go and do a view source, we'll see that we have content for both the dynamic div, and this is the Silverlight content. There isn't anything for the crawler to see, but down below, I've got the product name and a set of links that point back to that same page. So the crawler can follow all of those particular links and index that content. The other technique which I have in here is that for the page, I also set the title for the page so there's something relevant for the crawler to see. And I also set that label with the product name. So I've given it just a hint of information that says, hey, this is about gumbo in the title, and then on the page, I've actually got some content for that particular item. That's all I have to show. Ethan?
Cool. So what I'd like to do is show you guys some of the tools that we have available from live search to build your own search experience. And that's the guy I want. Can I trade places with you? So let's go back to... All right, cool. So the first thing I want to talk about is a query language. That's at the heart of every search, is really what are you searching and what are you going to bring back? So live search has a pretty robust query language, and I'll pull up an example of it here. Oh, that isn't what I wanted at all. Cool. So live search has a pretty robust query language that you can use to construct really your own search engine. The symbols are pretty self-explanatory, but I'll go through and quickly explain some of the keywords so you can see what it does. Contains allows you to return only web pages that contain links to files with this file type. So you could use that to look for all pages that give me PDFs or all pages that give me streaming media or something like that. And you can chain those together using these symbols to bring back a collection of file types. File type, the next keyword, brings back only individual files, not pages that contain those files. So you can envision the IRS building a tax form search engine using file type equals PDF and scoping the search just to irs.gov. Feed colon and has feed, these are synonymous, and they will force the results to only contain RSS or Atom feeds. Meta, this allows you to filter out only pages that have certain meta tags built into them, which is useful for building a query refinement type feature into your search engine. Macro is used to run a macro, which is our equivalent of a stored procedure. So you can wrap any of these up into, one search engine, name it, save it, and then call it again using macro. In anchor, in body, in title, in URL. These are all kind of the same. They look for a keyword in any one of these respective things. IP does a search for across all domains hosted on one IP address. So if you've got 5 websites on one server, that server has one IP address, you can search them all using this IP. It's also used for SEO sometimes to figure out who else is hosted on your website. Site will scope a search just to one domain. And it can be a subdomain or subdomain, but it's at the domain level. Language will scope to a specific region. To a specific language. Location will scope to a specific region. Prefer will emphasize one keyword over all the other keywords. And then these 3 guys right here, they're like dials. So you can use them to turn up and say, hey, freshest content is the highest priority, so it's 0 to 100%, or popular content is the highest priority for me, or the closest to match is the highest priority for me. So you can string all of these together with these operators and build pretty robust search engines. What's that? None of them are the default. So if you were to go to live search or live.com and perform a search, it assumes that none of those are turned on. And you can use that query language with our default, with our web search, our image search, and our new search, I believe. So let's go back here. And so let me show you just a sample search engine. All right, so dev.live.com is our homepage for all live search development stuff. And I actually already have our page open. I mentioned macros is what we call our stored procedures. We provide a little work area that will allow you to kind of create an experiment with your custom search engine before you save it. Get started. We are advanced users. And this is kind of our workspace, and you can see that we've got all the different keywords to find on the left. You can type in your query here and test it out right here. So just like a good TV chef, I've got a pre-built query in the oven. And the search engine that I thought I'd build is an ASP.NET search engine. Really kind of simple. Well, Microsoft has a couple big websites for ASP.NET, and you can see what I'm doing here is scoping the search to only include those websites. So MSDN or ASP.NET or got.NET. So let's do a query for custom handlers. Maybe we're building a sitemap library, and we want to spit out XML. And you can see the results for your macro on the left-hand side versus the results from live search. And we can see that we're getting exactly what we thought we'd get, which is only results from the domains that we've specified. So you could use this to build a custom search engine for your own website or set of websites, network of websites, in about a minute and a half. So let's go back here. A few other cool things that we could do are maybe we don't just want web search results. Maybe we want RSS feeds on ASP.NET. So maybe I'm looking for an Atlas feed. And the first result that comes back is the Atlas team blog. So you can just click the link, and it will add it to your RSS reader. You could also switch that out and do contains and look for video files. So maybe you're looking for tutorials that are video tutorials, and you can just run the same type of search. And now you'll see every page that's returned contains a video tutorial. So if you look at ASP.NET, here are the video tutorials right here. Watch the video, download the video, all of that good stuff. And they're all on Ajax. So here's just a few very simple things you can do. The next step is let's save this search engine. To save a search engine, you have to be logged in with your Passport or your Live ID profile. And we use that just to save the queries. And you have a namespace. And in this case, my namespace is just my username. Whoa. So let's just enter, let's just call it MIX. You also have the opportunity when you create a custom search engine, you can create a homepage for it. And I don't really care about that because I'm going to use this in an application. And here you go. You can test it out. The cool thing, once you've built this custom search engine, you can use it in any program you write, or you can give it to your customers and they can use it on live.com. So let's see, custom handler. I do a search on live.com, and here's my custom search engine that I can click on right here, and it just follows me around. You can also use it on our sidebar gadget that I've created ahead of time. And I've got two scopes, web scope in that same ASP.NET search engine. So by creating a stored procedure or stored query, you can use it again and again and again. Let's see. So what if you want to take that custom search engine and put it on your website? The easiest way to do that is to grab our Ajax control, embed the query in that Ajax control, and then you can just cut and paste it on your website. So we have a wizard here that will allow you to quickly build a control. So we'll just use the same macro that we just built, ASP.NET search. And then let's give it the full name here, Mbuji Mix. And we can test it out to make sure that it worked. Cool. So here we go. We see our search right here and a web search right there. We can go back and customize the look and feel, give a bigger search box. Maybe we want this to be a little bit smaller. And our site may be green, so we can go next. And this is all of the source code for the control. Just cut and paste it on your own website, and you're good to go. If you want to get a little bit more fancy, you can customize it even further, let's take a look at a web page I prepared. What I did is I basically just created a, oh, that's not what I wanted. I just created an empty HTML file. And can we open with Notepad? There we go. Just created an empty HTML page and pasted the code in it. So what you can see here is there's a very simple set of configuration options that you can go and manually adjust. And what I've done is I've removed the web tab because this is just an ASP.NET search engine, and I've added those other two custom searches that we created. So here's the initial search engine, just searching these sites. Here's looking for video files, and then here's looking for feeds. And we name the caption. This is each tab. So if we go ahead and run this page, all right, allow blocked content. Thank you, Vista. You can see that we get the search engine right here, and you can click on your tabs, and away you go. So that's just the easiest way to get up and running with your own custom search engine. So for more advanced users, you can use the SOAP API and really customize the user interface to be whatever you want, or not even have a user interface if you're building some SEO tools or some data mining tools. So I guess to help SOAP developers out, we've built an interactive SDK. Just click right here. And what I love about the interactive SDK is it breaks out the major tasks that you would want to do with the SOAP API, and it lists them down the left-hand side. So web search, image search, news search, phone book search, spelling search, and search tags. And within each of those major tasks are all of the primary options that someone might want to set. So you can see right here are the tasks, and in the main window, we give you a query that kind of illustrates the feature that you're running. And there's also a query builder that you can use, which is very similar to the search macro, where you can build your own search engine. So you can scope this down to msdn2.microsoft.com if you'd like, and you can see it dynamically builds the query right here. So /msdn. And then right in the center pane, we render the results from that query. So you can see that when you get back the first entry, you get back a title field, a description field, a URL, and a display URL. And then you can render those however you want in your application. The XML tab shows you what the raw SOAP envelope looks like. And then you can take a look at the source code and see the smallest amount of source code that you would have to write to get this functionality to work. And these samples are in C#. So you can see here it's really not that much code. All you have to do is add this WSDL as a web reference in your Visual Studio project, and then Visual Studio will auto-populate a class that has all of the methods that you'll need to call the service. So you can see right here, we've got a source request object that we set a bunch of properties on, including your app ID. We send that to the web service, and then we get back a response object, which we just iterate through and show you how to pull out the right fields, or the pertinent fields. There's actually a lot more fields, but these are the primary ones that you would want. One other thing to notice is that the source request, the request object is actually an array of objects. So in one query, you can send a web search, a spelling search, an image search, a news search, and a phone book search all at the same time. And you get them back as an array of objects. And you can just iterate through that array of objects. This is most useful when you're doing a web search and you want to add spelling as well. Or maybe you want to have a meta search engine and display image results and web results and spelling results at the same time. You can just bake them all into one query. And the last tab is a reference tab. And this is the MSDN reference for each of the objects within the API. So you can just navigate through here and get all the information you want. So there you go. That's it. Those are the tools. One more thing is, so this is I guess the smallest code snippets that you would need to get something done. But if you want a full-blown application, everybody got these in their handout bag. And what's on these keys are everything you need to program live search as well as virtual earth. from these code samples to full-blown sample applications and starter applications. We also support the major non-Microsoft programming languages. So if you're not a C# guy, we also support Ruby, PHP, Python, Java, and Flash, and a couple others that I can't think of right now. So it's all in here. I hope you still have it, and take it home and play with it. Let's see. So back to the demo. Cool. So the next thing I want to talk about is commercial terms of use. Up until now, if you wanted to use the SOAP API, we had very, very constrained terms of use that basically said you can't use it unless it's doing an experiment that nobody will ever see or use. So we've relaxed those quite substantially. So now you can use it commercially on almost any type of application. So if you're a government website, a personal website, a blog, a bank, an e-commerce website, feel free to use our live search service to build your own site search or any other type of application. We've also upped the maximum query allotment per day from 5,000 to 25,000, which is much, much higher than Yahoo and Google, which are 5,000 and 1,000 respectively. We still throttle the queries at 10 queries per second to make sure that we're not getting any denial of service attacks. We also don't offer an enterprise-level service agreement for this offering. And online support is available at Microsoft Forums.
So Nathan, when are you guys thinking of providing enterprise-level SLAs?
I'm glad you asked, Jonathan. So next year at MIX, we will announce an advertising-supported model. And the whole business model of live search is really, there's two things that we're looking for. The value exchange for us is ad clicks. We are really an ad business, not a search business. So you'll see all the value props that we provide will incent you guys and make it useful for you guys to include our ads as well. So what we really want are you next year to display ads, and if you do that, we'll give you the enterprise level service agreement, as well as branding. That's the other thing that we're very interested in. Yeah.
The Ad Center contextual marketplace, like the parallel link to AdSense available right now?
It's not available right now. I believe it's in a very limited beta. Oh, the question is the Ad Center contextual ad widget available today? And this is analogous to the AdSense control that people can use from Google. It's in beta right now. I don't think I can talk about the release time frame, but we are working on it. Vague answer. So can I just ask a few questions of the audience? How many people here are interested in building search into your applications? Show of hands. Right on. Okay. How many people are interested in search engines searching your websites? About the same. Okay. Do you guys have a lot of questions? What do you guys think? Do most people roll their own search engines today using some sort of CMS system or handwritten database application? Kind of general.
I mean, how can you really trust that you've indexed, say, all the products in a 50,000 product catalog?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big challenge that we have today. So that's where sitemaps are going. The idea with sitemaps is that eventually, as we ramp up our index size, we'll be able to go to a sitemap and say, hey, if you guys are using live search and using it to build a custom search experience, we're going to give you the best crawl that we possibly can so that your on-site search engine will be a good experience.
There's also ways of dynamic sites where in a business community and your business users are constantly changing the site in a SharePoint fashion. That needs to remain searchable because it's not SharePoint, so it's not built on that foundation. And that poses a lot of challenges for dynamic site management. Pulling from databases, pulling from a lot of different sources of content.
Yeah, that's a big challenge we've had. I don't know if, I assume that you guys are familiar with MSDN and possibly TechNet as well. Those are two very large, very dynamic websites that are built on a handful of different content management systems. And up until about a year ago, it was incredibly painful to search them because if you wanted to search the knowledge base, you had to go to the knowledge base and deal with that UI. And if you wanted to search articles, you had to go to a different UI and search articles. We didn't have kind of a meta search engine that brought all of those together and did relevancy between those different, I guess, data sources as well as in those different data sources. That's where I think a web search can really be beneficial, because it can go out and crawl all of those different pages, no matter how often, no matter how dynamic they change, and at least take the top set of those pages that are actually used and build a great search experience on top of that. So it's an option. We could, oh, was there another question?
Could you review how much of this is real today and how much of this is futures?
With respect to all the things we've seen, from a live search standpoint, everything I just showed you here is all real. You can all use it today. You can use it all today, whether it's a custom search, whether it's a stored query, available on live.com, the SOAP API, the terms of use on the API, the 25,000 queries. You can open up your laptop and do it all right now.
In terms of the tools for ASP.NET, we shipped the CDP, I think, on Monday. There's a Go Live license in there. And this includes the search data source and our support for adding dynamic data to sitemaps.
So that's available the coming Monday or this past Monday?
It got released 2 days ago.
Okay.
Yep. So if you go up to ajax.asp.net, or if you go up to ASP.NET, you can go and download those tools. It is preview bits, which means we will make changes based on feedback from the community. So I do encourage you to go out there. If you want to send me a personal email, I'm jhawk@microsoft.com. If you want to come up later, we can share email addresses. So in closing, we have a bunch of references or things for folks to go and take a look at. Each of the search engine vendors have tools and guidelines for both webmasters and for developers. And we've put all of the relevant links to get started in there. Plus, there's a link to the sitemap protocol, which is a great way to get started in terms of being able to generate relevant links for your particular website. What else do we have? So in summary, go out and try and add search if you are an ASP.NET developer or you are building Silverlight content. We have some great offerings for that. If you want to go even further, Live Search has some great tools where you can go and really customize the actual search queries. And as Nathan said, you have all the tools either on the actual USB jump drive which you have, or you can go up to the site and download the ASP.NET bits. And please fill out your evals and give us feedback so that we can improve the content for future Mix demos.
And ask questions.
Yep.
If you guys have just burning questions, I'd love to hear them. And I'd also, if you don't have questions, I'd like to ask you questions and find out, how do you build search?
Are the slides on the jump drive as well? Or are they going to be up on the Mix site?
The slides will be posted on the Mix site either today or within a couple days. Plus, I think the sessions are being taped, and I saw that those feeds will be available to view.
Now, you said you like your custom search provider. That's included in the future CTP?
Correct. So the question is the source code for the custom search provider provided? If you go and install the ASP.NET Future CDP Quick Starts, you can view the source code for there. It took me like 20 minutes to put it together, and it's mostly figuring out getting registered with Yahoo and decoding the XML. So it's really simple to build one.
Other than the link where you showed in that, the rest of it, essentially, you could just do it in that 2.0 application as well?
So the question about the code, I did show a link. Can I use other techniques to do it in terms of a two-tier application? So all of the code that I showed today is running on top of ASP.NET 2.0 with ASP.NET Ajax 1.0, and I happen to be using an older build of Link to be able to run on top of that, which is the May 2006 CDP of Link. So everything I'm showing you today runs on top of ASP.NET 2.0 with ASP.NET Ajax 1.0. All of this will also run on top of AUKUS. Do we have any more questions out there? I think you had some questions.
Yeah. So, should we be investing in a web search? I mean, when you guys think about adding search as a feature to your applications, you all think it's important because you're here. Do you want a web service? Do you want us to invest? We got 100 people. Should we invest in a web service? Should we invest in making SharePoint better? Should we invest in sample code on top of Visual Studio or ASP to make your ability to build a custom search even easier? What do you guys want?
I think, personally, from my perspective, that we don't have a huge internet presence. Most of it's large global internet applications and internal call center apps and things of that nature. Investment in server technologies that we can implement in our infrastructure to host searches outside of SharePoint will probably be our work.
Okay. So just to repeat the question, what about web applications or enterprises which are not hosted on the internet? What types of offerings could be provided for that? And it's there to provide search capabilities outside of SharePoint where I may have sort of multiple websites. How do I plug in a search engine into that particular environment? So a question for you, if we use something like SharePoint Search to be able to index your sites, but provided a search provider that you could host inside your own websites, they could then go and use their crawler. And I think the model would be to use SharePoint as an enterprise crawler, but then you can query against that. And plus you could query against your own data.
Yeah, or
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the problems I feel as a developer when I want to search anything on Microsoft, it's much easier to search on Google than on any of your end.
I'm sorry. What was that? I haven't heard of that.
You already didn't believe it. It's much easier to use Google to get the results than to go to the problem that you were stating. That you go to TechNet or MSDN, it's much easier to go to Google. So, and for me, as putting the search on my site, why should I use Live and not Google? It's not something that it's being easier. But the main thing is the engine gives us more results. It's Google.
Yeah. So the question is, to sum it up, is why Live versus Google? When you think about building a custom search experience on your site, why would you use Live?
And especially over Microsoft content.
And with a caveat that, by the way, search on Microsoft.com isn't great, and I prefer doing it from Google. Those are two separate questions, and I'll answer the first one I mentioned first. Google has a couple search site offerings, but they're mostly around using one of their Ajax controls on your website. That doesn't work for everybody. For some people, they need to build a more custom search engine with more advanced features, like query refinement. I guess Google's Ajax control does support that. But maybe you want to augment it with, I don't know. Yeah, I guess Google search engine supports that too.
More Google policy with query today, right?
It depends on which API you're using from Google, honestly. I guess the big differentiator is Google gives you an Ajax control, and that gives them complete control over how the look and feel is, which could be a good thing for their business. But they reserve the right to insert ads, their own ads at any time, and they also reserve the right to change that at any time. With the Live Search SOAP API, I guess our idea is that eventually when we support ads, we'll give you the ads as a separate stream and allow you to build that user experience in a way that, trusting that you guys have a better understanding of your customers and your website and what they're doing, and be able to display that in an optimal way from your standpoint.
But where is the results set?
The result set. So I can tell you safely that our number one and our number two investment this year are all about relevancy, 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 and the best index possible. So we've been closing the gap, and we're going to continue to drive on that. Are we completely there? Depends what the search is. So
How do you go about measuring that relevancy?
there's a couple ways to look at it. We have two ways that we think about internally.
I'm saying like from a pure measurement point
So we break it, how do we, I'm sorry, is the question about how do we determine which sites are better, or how do we determine how?
We're trying to make sure we're relevant for relevant.
Gotcha.
Relevant to Google. Like,
Yeah.
how do you really measure that?
So the question is, how do you think about relevancy in terms of metrics and then comparing yourself to Google? It's a great question. It's a hard question. We measure relevancy in two ways internally. One is we have a panel of humans. Sounds kind of funny. But we have a panel of real people that we do focus groups on in an ongoing basis, and we use those results to gauge how good we're doing. Another thing we look at is query abandonment, and how often do we see in our actual search experience people finding the right answer and using that, or just abandoning our search. And we measure both of those against all the different, I guess, types of queries and vertical content types that we've segmented search into. So saying that we're better or equal to or worse than Google, it's a hard thing to say because there's a lot of different types of queries out there. And in some places, we've been driving really hard and gotten really, really close to Google. In other places, we're still not quite as good. Any other tough questions?
Okay, thank you. If you would like to come up after, we can chat about any other items. Thank you so much.